Imagine this. It's 1907. The New York Stock Exchange is on the verge of collapse. Banks are failing, panic is spreading, and ordinary Americans are terrified that their savings will vanish overnight. There's no Federal Reserve yet, no government safety net to step in. And in that moment, while Washington is paralyzed, one man takes charge. He gathers the nation's most powerful bankers inside his Manhattan library, locks the doors, and refuses to let them leave until they agree on a plan to rescue the U.S. economy. That man was J.P. Morgan. And in a very real sense, he didn't just save Wall Street, he saved America. But how did one individual become so powerful that he could literally hold the financial system in his hands? To understand that, we need to go back to the very beginning. John Pierpont Morgan was born in 1837 into a world of privilege. His father, Junius Morgan, was already a successful banker who worked closely with George Peabody, one of the most respected American financiers in London. From the start, J.P. wasn't just another kid, he was groomed for greatness. He studied in Europe, spoke multiple languages, and was trained to think in terms of global finance long before most Americans even considered the idea. But wealth and connections only explain part of his story. J.P. Morgan had something else, an almost ruthless sense of control. He wasn't the kind of man who dreamed about taking risks or betting on wild ventures. He wanted order, structure, and power. And he realized that the American economy, with all its rapid industrial growth, was chaotic and unstable. If he could bring order to it, he could not only shape industries, he could dominate them. One of Morgan's earliest breakthroughs came during the Civil War. While the nation was fighting for survival, he was already making money by financing weapons and supplies. Some accused him of profiteering, but to Morgan, it was just business. He quickly learned that in times of crisis, those who controlled capital had the real power. And that became his lifelong strategy. By the late 1800s, America was in the middle of the Gilded Age, a time of massive industrial expansion. Railroads were crisscrossing the nation, factories were booming, and fortunes were being made overnight. But the system was also wildly unstable. Railroads went bankrupt all the time. Stocks soared one day and crashed the next. And it was here that J.P. Morgan saw his greatest opportunity. He started consolidating. Instead of letting dozens of competing railroads destroy each other, he forced them into alliances, mergers, and trusts. He believed fewer, stronger companies were better than chaotic competition. Some called it efficiency. Others called it monopoly. But for Morgan, it was about control. He became the man who dictated which railroads lived and which ones died. His influence only grew. In 1892, Morgan helped finance the merger that created General Electric, bringing Thomas Edison's company together with Charles Coffin's Thomson Houston. This wasn't just another deal. It was the creation of America's first great industrial giant. Electricity was the future, and Morgan wanted to own it. But perhaps his greatest move came in 1901, when he bought out Andrew Carnegie's steel empire for nearly $500 million, a mind-blowing sum at the time. From that deal, U.S. Steel was born, the first billion-dollar corporation in American history. Think about that. In today's terms, it would be like creating a company worth hundreds of billions overnight. And at the center of it all was Morgan, the man who had convinced Carnegie to sell and the bankers to finance it. With railroads, electricity, and steel under his influence, Morgan wasn't just a banker anymore. He was the empire builder behind America's rise as an industrial powerhouse. But his power also terrified people. Politicians, journalists, and ordinary citizens started asking, how could one man hold so much sway over the nation's economy? That question became even more urgent in 1907, during the financial panic I mentioned earlier. Banks were failing, trust companies were collapsing, and there was no central bank to stabilize the system. President Theodore Roosevelt and the Treasury Department couldn't move fast enough. So who did everyone turn to? J.P. Morgan. Inside his library on Madison Avenue, Morgan called in New York's top bankers, insurance men, and industrial leaders. He assessed the books, decided who was solvent and who wasn't, and forced deals that kept the financial system from imploding. At one point, when one group of bankers hesitated, Morgan literally locked the doors and wouldn't let them out until they agreed to provide the necessary funds. It was raw power in action, and it worked. The panic was contained, and Morgan's reputation as the nation's savior was cemented. But here's the thing. That kind of power-scared people. Americans realized their economy depended not on their elected government, but on the private will of a single banker. The result? Just a few years later, in 1913, Congress created the Federal Reserve, an institution designed to make sure no individual, no matter how rich, could ever again control the financial system the way J.P. Morgan had. J.P. Morgan died the same year, in 1913, at the age of 75. When word spread, Wall Street fell silent. The New York Stock Exchange paused trading in his honor. And when his will was read, the public was shocked. For all his legendary power and influence, Morgan's personal fortune was about $80 million. Not even close to the billionaires of his time like Rockefeller or Carnegie. For Morgan, it had never been just about wealth. It was about power, about control, about shaping the destiny of America. And that's why he's remembered as the man who bought America. Not because he literally owned it, but because his influence was so vast. His handprints are still visible on the foundations of American industry and finance. Railroads, electricity, steel, banking, all of it bears the mark of J.P. Morgan.